what mass issues of youth does RYL take up and campaign around? How does it help connect issues of youth such as land, unemployment, rising tuition and debt, and others to help build up the pro-people mass movement in Kenya?
Well, I would say that first of all, we have the Revolutionary Youth League, and we have an auxiliary organization under the Revolutionary Youth League, which is the Revolutionary Students Commission. So issues of rising tuition and debt are already addressed there. We have the issues of rise the student, I will say student loans, but not as I understand it in the particularly how it's playing out in the United States, but it's getting there. It's heading towards there. There's privatization of learning institutions. There's means testing, a lot of means testing being introduced. So there are campaigns to revert back to the old model of funding, which was basically giving students grants instead of having a means tested loaning system, which is the current model called the new funding model. That's one of the things that we are looking to address through the Revolutionary Students Commission. But with the rest of this, we're basically trying to organize a lot of young people to be able to undertake political activities, to interact with theory as well, and to be able to understand the kind of policies that are being pushed by the government. On the land front, for example, there's issues of privatization of the seed companies. There's the issue of that those types of issues as well, but particularly with unemployment, that is where we are mostly looking towards organizing because Kenya is a very young population. The median age is 21 years, and a majority of young people in Kenya are unemployed. So we are looking to really rally young people to understand exactly why unemployment is an issue in Kenya, help them to connect that to the struggles of the comprador agents who are the current ruling class in Kenya, as well as the imperial interest and how both of these factors shape the dire economic situation in Kenya that causes unemployment. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Casper, you can talk more
Yes,
about
yes,
that as
yes,
well.
yes. As quite Comrade GS puts it, Kenya is quite a young population, and that the youth, that is the people below the age of 35, comprise the 75% of the entire population of our nation. And therefore, when the Revolutionary Youth League comes in, is at the tip of the spear in forging the struggle for our people. And currently, a situation is developing in Kenya which is reminiscent of the pre-independence era, whereby the people are fighting for their rights at all costs. And this is because the comprador bourgeois has been able to alienate them from basic needs. One, from, for instance, as Comrade Kirito has put it, access to equal education system, access to decent employment, access to education. And our young people are the ones who are the suffering majority of this. And therefore, the Revolutionary Youth League comes in as a tool in mobilizing these youth to channel their struggles, to articulate them much more well, to sensitize them, and forge a united front in combating our primary enemy, who is the comprador bourgeois here. And therefore, it is in nature of a mass organization. Therefore, it serves as a wing in which the party interacts with the larger population of our people to bring them on board and unite them through a united front in combating our primary enemy, who is the comprador bourgeois.
Caspar, actually, I think we should also as well mention this, what the party line is regarding how we call the protests that happened last year. Because I know we are currently using the word Gen Z uprising, but the Communist Party Marxist Kenya prefers to use the term the June 25th uprising. There's been there's how do we say factionalism or like compartmentalizing of the struggle, because a lot of young people showed out, a lot of young people went out on the streets last year to protest the finance bill that was looking to increase taxes, that was looking to, carry out a lot of privatization, selling off state corporations and things of that sort. And because of this, it basically, the government took like the tactic of trying to say, well, these are the interests that young people are asking for, but they were trying to create like a false dichotomy whereby these aren't in the interests of the older generations, especially even like the parents and the grandparents. So there was this need, for example, to one, try and use blackmail to be like through abducting young people. They would basically try to get the parents to like say sorry, and that their kids will never do this again. A lot of humiliating of young people. I remember, Casper, you remember this guy from Embu, Brian, the one who was abducted. You remember him? So we had gone to visit his place uh, in December of last year to be able to reassure the parents that he is going to be returned and everything. But you could see the kind of sorrow, the kind of grief on the parents, because for them, when a child is abducted, they aren't thinking of anything else apart from getting their child back. So all there is in their heads is, I will do anything, compromise with William Ruto, lick his feet, anything of the sort, just to make sure my child is gotten back. So there's this whole thing of trying to frame the best interests of parents as being on the side of William Ruto in opposition to young people that oppose William Ruto, which is a false dichotomy because, our parents have gone through the era of Daniel Arap Moi, who was the last dictator of Kenya. And they told us the stories of dictatorship. They told us the stories of how people were suffering during their time. The Sabasaba protest that happened last year, Sabasaba, which is July 7th, were inspired off of protests that happened during the Moi era. So really, we can't say that a majority demographic that was on the streets last year was Gen Z, but this was a multi-generational protest. And that factionalism was what they were trying to push for. I don't know if you can, if I have missed out anything on that, Caspar.
Yeah, comrade, maybe just to add on, is to say that maybe the younger compatriot of the generation that is emerging, the only difference with them, or maybe with the older generation, is that the younger compatriot is a bit educated, and therefore he's more articulate in prioritizing his rights, and he can actually see through, and he's less gullible to the vacuous empty promises of the day of the government. He's more pragmatic, and a tactic that the diversionary tactic that the government uses is to make it an age issue, and which community have put it, that they want to break it down to look like it's for the younger generation, which is not. And they look into it, the younger generation doesn't look down upon the older generation, in fact, and doesn't look also down of those who have of less education. But on the contrary, it looks upon to lifting each other. If, for instance, you look at on how the June uprising went by, it was the young people who tried to educate the entire population about the finance bill, to point out the particular clauses that were harmful to the economy. It was them, not only as a show off, but as a way of creating awareness to the larger population to understand what it really means. And even there came out various manifestation of the interpretation of it, and even the people went far ahead to interpret the finance bill into the local languages to make sure that even the old compatriot is able to really understand what it really means into the native local languages, to make sure that even the farmer in the village, the old people in the rural areas are able to understand what it really means and why we should really all fight against it, and why it is not an issue of age, but it's an issue of national progression. That's all from that.
Yeah.
So the second question is, how can we be more in solidarity internationally with the working youth of Kenya?
Sorry, I needed to unmute my mic there. Yeah, maybe I'll get into that answer a little, but maybe I should also add on the previous question. We also need to bring up the issue as well of women in the struggle. And last year there were no, so last year actually did not begin. One of the major protests, street protests that happened, the first among the first wasn't necessarily even the protest against the finance bill, because those came in June. So around January, February, there were anti-femicide protests that were happening in Kenya. And of course, it was a multi-organizational effort that also included some liberal organizations and whatnot. But by and large, the goal was to essentially highlight the kind of femicides that were happening in Kenya. There are very alarming issues of women being killed, women being sexually assaulted and found in the streets. And of course, a lot of these cases, the rising number of cases, some of them are being dismissed on the basis of this person was a victim of femicide, but she's a socialite. This person was a victim of femicide, but she was she had specific issues with the partner that can lead us to dismiss the case entirely. And so those kinds of justifications for femicide were really rising until now. They were pushed back against through anti-femicide protests. I think there were like 2 to 3. The one that happened before the June 25th uprising was generally nonviolent, in that the police officers did not come in to like launch tear gas, and the government didn't try and like hire thugs to infiltrate the protest so that they can now say, oh, these people are being violent. But that kind of changed after the June 25th uprising. You see a lot of anti-femicide protests coming under heavy government infiltration and violence. So a lot of the concerns that were raised through the anti-femicide protests are generally being considered and taken up by the Revolutionary Youth League. We believe that women should not have to walk on eggshells when it comes to being able to articulate issues of sexual violence amongst them. And this should be loudly put out in the public and denounced, right? These kinds of acts of sexual violence. And just as to finish that off, just the other day, our commander-in-chief, in the footsteps of the Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, the president of Uganda, carried out this thing, the prerogative of mercy, where he pardoned prisoners, and half of them were pedophiles. So, again, on the footsteps of Museveni, the one who is carrying out the anti-queer laws. So make of that what you will. So what we are looking for in terms of international solidarity is really to be able to place pressure on the various imperial organizations that are backing the comprador agents in Kenya. For example, last year we had the finance bill 2024 that was heavily that had heavy contribution from the World Bank specifically. It was even reported on mainstream media, surprisingly. And you even had, like, I think 6 senators from the United States, 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans. I forget their names, but I think after this, we probably can insert them here in the interview. But they were basically here to supervise the process of the finance bill being passed into law. So we can, on our side, do as much as we can to put pressure on the government, on William Ruto, on the current Deputy President Kindiki Kithure, his Prime Minister Musalia Mudavadi, and the entirety of Cabinet and Parliament. But I think it is also very much needed to coordinate pressure campaigns on entities that are also backing them. For example, the World Bank. We also are looking to push back against certain entities like AFRICOM, US-Africom, that recently carried out a summit in Kenya. For those who may not know that are following this interview, this interview, there is Kenya became designated under the previous Joe Biden administration to be the 5th non-NATO ally in Africa. The other 4 having been the North African countries of Tunisia, Egypt, Morocco, and Tunisia, Egypt, Morocco, and Algeria, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, in Algeria. So Kenya became the first African country outside of North Africa to become a NATO ally. We have this resulting in various actions. For example, Kenya taking on the role that the compradors in the that have previously ruled the Sahelian states before the uprisings that happened. Kenya taking on that role. The military activities that were being carried out in the Sahel are being transferred to Kenya with the closure of the military bases in Sahel. So we have those kinds of actions that we need to push back against. Of course, we can put pressure on the Kenyan side to be able to push back against the Batuk, the British army training base of the United Kingdom. As well as these American bases, but will also require international solidarity to put pressure on the institutions of NATO that exist in Europe and the United States, particularly Europe, because AFRICOM is headquartered in US-Africom is headquartered in Germany. So we also require that kind of solidarity in that way. So I think there is need to develop proper campaigns that can be coordinated to combat these issues. Maybe Caspar, you have something else that I have forgotten to miss out in terms of the kind of campaigns and activities the Revolutionary Youth League is looking to carry out.
Okay, thank you. Comrade GS, you're quite well articulate on the issue of international solidarity. What I would like to come in is that throughout history, international solidarity of all the progressive and fighting forces has played a major role in combating our primary enemy, comparable bourgeois and imperialism. And you can see this all along from the struggle of the people of Cuba, their help from the Soviets. And you can also look at it and how the Cuba returned the hand in fighting the liberation of Angola and the ending of apartheid in South Africa. And therefore, international solidarity plays a very key role in the liberation movements, and it's one of the pivotal points that we should actually work together and coordinate together to ensure that our struggles, the struggles of the Kenyan people, is not isolated from the struggles of the people of Sudan. The struggles of the Kenyan youth and the entire population is not isolated from the struggles of the people of Congo. And on top of it all, entirely, we shouldn't let, for instance, the suffering of the people of Western Sahara under the Moroccan occupation be forgotten because we're not together. And therefore, we should be able to articulate all the inequalities that are forced in upon our people, all the way from Haiti to Palestine. As a Communist Party and as the Revolutionary Youth League, we are committed not only in our words, but also in whatever means that we can to align ourselves with all the oppressed people of the world. And as we have always adopted it, that an injury to a comrade is an injury to all. And therefore, the people, the pain of the refugees in the Tindol camps in Algeria who have been moved away from their homeland through the Moroccan occupation is felt the same. The displaced people of Goma, the displaced people of Sudan, and the displaced people of Palestine their struggle remain our struggle in forging forward. And therefore, we don't forge our struggles isolated. And the RYL has remained committed to that, and it carries out these offers solidarity messages over time, from time to time, and it has dedicated itself to it. And also, more importantly, in terms of partnering up, in terms of international solidarity, it also plays a key role in international exchange programs, whereby the comrades are being able to interact with other comrades from other states. Just like you came in during the TheoCon, people are able to really understand the material conditions of the struggles of other nations that people are going through, and they can be able to learn one or two lessons, and also be able to look into ways in which they can actually help or assist in advancing the struggle. And in the current era, we're in the current era of information, an age of information. And you can see on how the June protests really spark out uprisings all across the continent. You saw that the Nigerian youth were also influenced by the June uprising, and they also tried to carry out one of their own. Our neighbors here in Uganda also tried to carry out one of their own. And therefore, it plays a very key role in raising the consciousness, not only of the Kenyan people, but of the entire global South and the alienated people to fight and stand up against imperialism. Remember, we cannot fight against imperialism alone. Imperialism is entrenched globally. And therefore, you can't say that we're going to fight it isolated from the entire global progressive forces. And therefore, it is a role that we look into partnering with all progressive and fighting forces in combating our primary enemy. And also, just to sum up, as you can see, what is happening in the Sahel, there's a smear propaganda against a pro-people's coup, in whereby the imperialist tries to smear the coups that happen in Burkina, Mali, and they want to turn to the world that it's the coups are bad. But in quite the contrary, the coups are pro-people. They are progressing the people's betterment. If you look what Comrade Ibrahim Traore is doing there in Burkina, it's quite tremendous work. He's continuing the legacy of Comrade Thomas Sankara. And therefore, we should always, as Africans and as liberation movements, we should always stand in solidarity with those who progress the people's fight. And at no given point should we leave them to be sunk down or be smeared badly by the West media. We should always stand there to protect them and also try to disseminate the correct information about them. That's a comment.
How are the mass struggles of the youth and the Kenyan people related to the struggles of the people around the world against imperialism? I think you guys answered actually quite a bit of that. But if there's anything else to add as well, feel free to.
Yeah, maybe I can start by pointing out the fact that the uprising that happened in Kenya last year really showed how the struggles of the Kenyan masses are particularly connected to the struggles of the masses of other East African countries. So by this I mean, firstly, Uganda, Tanzania, Burundi, Rwanda, and even the DRC. Because when the people rose up last year to protest the finance bill, um, President William Ruto particularly was coordinating with President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni of Uganda to bring in police officers from Uganda to be able to assist police officers in Kenya to crack down on protesters. So by this, I think it's very clear that the there is solidarity between the comprador classes in East Africa. That means, of course, that we cannot rise up in Kenya if people in Uganda do not rise up, because if one of us rises up in isolation, the consolidated forces of compradors in East Africa will crush that isolated portion of the East African population. So there is that. There is Tanzania as well, where you see the President Samia Suluhu also as well coordinating with William Ruto. And you can that is one way in which like the struggles of Kenya are not just limited to Kenya alone, branching out of the formal East African what we can formally call East Africa, including South Sudan and Somalia. We have Sudan, and there, of course, I will say proxy war that is happening. That is as a result of the rapid support forces falling out with the Sudanese armed forces, and the rapid support forces subsequently carrying out overt genocidal action against the Sudanese population. Their commander, Hemedi, I'm forgetting the formal name, but the commander Hemedi was in Kenya to actually set up a parallel government and launch a parallel government by the rapid support forces in Kenya. So the part of that, of course, we of course know is going to involve Hemedi providing militant support to President Ruto against the Kenyan population. And in return, having William Ruto assist Hemedi not only with mercenaries from Kenya, but also with assistance to exploit and extract resources out of Sudan through countries such as Uganda into Kenya and out towards places like the United Arab Emirates. So you can see the struggles of the Sudanese masses and the struggles of the Kenyan masses are very, very much interconnected, as well as struggles in Palestine and Haiti. With Haiti, of course, because Kenya has been tapped by the United States to provide cover for an American invasion, yet another American-led invasion into Haiti. Of course, the previous one, I believe the cover that was being provided was by Brazil. And before that, you've had, and in between, you've had several United Nations peacekeeping operations or so-called peacekeeping operations. Kenya is now the latest in a string of invasions that have been inflicted upon the Haitian masses. And the police officers being sent to Haiti are the same police officers who are abducting people in Kenya, who are killing people in Kenya, who are torturing people in Kenya. So the struggles of the Haitian masses and the Kenyan masses are particularly interconnected. With Palestine, of course, we have the Israel, as of recent news, pushing Kenya to try to purchase a missile system. Right? I believe it's worth $13.5 billion dollars. And this is, of course, not new. There has been a history of the Kenyan government coordinating activities with Israel. For example, Kenya was also part of other countries that were joining in on Pegasus, the intelligence system that was being disseminated by Israel. And generally, there has been a history of Kenya liaising or coordinating with Israel, going back as well to the Entebbe crisis of the 1970s. So the struggles of the Kenyan masses and the Palestinian masses are very much interconnected. So it is our opinion as the Revolutionary Youth League that we cannot fight this in isolation. And because we are, of course, part of the Communist Party Marxist Kenya, the struggles of the working class of Kenya can only be realized in its liberated state through coordinating with the working classes all around the world, from the United States to Britain to China and Thailand and everywhere else. I know, for example, Comrade Kasbah has a lot to say on Western Sahara, particularly because he's been following that. He's been following up on that particularly, so I'll leave that to him.
Thank you, comrade. And you're quite correct and well articulate when you say that Kenya is actually playing a critical role in continuing inflicting pain upon the oppressed masses. One, remember, Kenya is playing a role as an African and aligned NATO, but is also that sent police officers to Haiti. And also, Kenya has played hostage of, it has hosted monarchs. Remember, the King of England was here, the Netherlands was here, and several monarchs have been here to just to continue the oppression, to ensure the colonial oppression continues across Africa. And Kenya has happened as a hub of these imperialist puppets. And they have continued to welcome them and to continue sabotaging the people's progressive movements. Remember also, Comrade Kiza Pesiji of Uganda was abducted here in the Kenyan soil. And as you put it, Comrade Hemedi of Sudan, their illegal government was installed here in Kenya. And therefore, Kenya has remained a hub of the imperialist puppet. And therefore, as the RYL, we remain committed to combating this and continue to condemn, not only in words, but also in actions that we tend to line up with protests, street march out to really condemn these inactions and ill-will activities that the government is conducting. And we continue to stand in solidarity with all the oppressed people. And we separate ourselves from the actions taken by the government of the day, the puppet imperialist government led by the butcher of Sugoi, William Samoei Ruto. We continue to condemn him so, and we shall never shy away from saying it. And even as the people think that he should finish a term, we say that he should not. He should even die today. We wish him nothing but death every morning. And we do this not out of hate, but we do this as our revolutionary commitment to the entire justice of all the oppressed people, the people of Sudan, the people of Congo, the people of Palestine, and most importantly, the Africans' last colony. When this regime came into power, it revoked its international diplomatic relations with the people of Western Sahara and in fact recognized Morocco And therefore, at no given point as a progressive movement shall we ever side with the oppressor. That is a line that we shall never compromise. That at no given time shall we negotiate about the liberation of the people, be it in our nation or in the entire continent or in the globally. That our commitment remains to the people. And as a way of doing so, and Comrade Creator is here, he plays a very critical role in also playing out, pointing out the plights and the fights of the people of Haiti, to make the Kenyan people understand that our struggle and the struggles of the people of Haiti is the same. And the sending of the Kenyan police, the illegal, in fact, is illegal, the sending of the police, and the courts had pronounced themselves so. But the government went ahead to carry out the mission. It's illegal to intervene into the freedom of the people of Haiti, being the first nation to actually fight slavery and liberate itself. But Kenya is being used as an arm to continue strangling the free people of Haiti by the imperialist powers. And therefore, we shall continue condemning it, and also, as I pointed out earlier, continue doing it, spreading awareness to our people, our masses, to really understand. Remember that the West has quite carried out a good arrest and smear propaganda to make sure that our people are firstly separated from the truth. They never know the truth. For instance, if you were to look out about the question of Western Sahara, nobody speaks about it. And even this coming years, Morocco is going to host the African AFCON, the games, the African Cup of Nations, is going to be hosted in Morocco. And Morocco is a member of the African Union, where we do say that African Union is a body of liberated African and independent nations. It's a member of the body, but at the same time, it's occupying the territory of Western Sahara and actually plundering its resources. It has sent the indigenous people of Western Sahara into refugee camps, and those who have remained there are oppressed. They are denied of basic rights like water, and they're segregated from acquiring any formal education, so that they undergo what they are calling Moroccanization. But the African nation the African organization remains quiet about it, and in fact allows Morocco to sit at the organization. And therefore we don't see it as a way that the struggle has ended. And therefore we believe in a continued protected people's struggle, that we shall continue waging war against all these imperialist fronts, be it here in Kenya or whatever front that they might manifest themselves, and continue to rally with the people, not alone, amongst the people and with the people. And we truly believe that the revolution will be carried out and it will be a success. And we do so by reflection and our actions moving together simultaneously to ensure that the United People's Fronts carry out the revolution to a success, to ensure that the liberation of all the people, not only in Kenya, but all the oppressed people across the continent and across the globe.
Maybe before we continue, yes. Comrade Caspar, we must not forget that today is 1st June, Madaraka Day.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
So like with today, I've just realized today is also a significant day that we are recording this, because Kenya has two. I guess we have 2 days when we celebrate independence, technically, 1st June and 12th December. So 1st June was 1st June 1963. That was the day when Kenya became, was able to achieve independence, but was not yet declared a republic. So we were still under the Queen, but we were able to have our own independent government and elect a prime minister. Technically, Jomo Kenyatta was the 2nd prime minister, since the true first prime minister of Kenya, of course, was Field Marshal Dedan Kimathi, who was the head of the Kenya Land and Freedom Army movement that fought against the British to achieve independence for Kenya. Then we have 12th December 1964, which was a year later when Kenya was formally declared a republic. And we were in Kenya, and Jomo Kenyatta, the sellout, was able to make himself the official first president of Kenya. So today on June 1st, Madaraka Day. How do we translate Madaraka Day to English, Comrade Casper?
It's actually it's liberation. It's actually liberation.
Liberation. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it can be, liberation. So on Liberation Day for Kenya, of course, we must also add that the national, the principles of a national democratic revolution live on, and we shall push for what the militants and revolutionaries that were led by Dedan Kimathi we shall push for those principles to be realized in our own lifetime. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for bringing up that, Comrade GS. Now, it's quite clearly that you brought it up that on this Liberation Day, that it was quite a well orchestrated move by the colonialists to hand over power to their puppets, Jomo, and to make sure that he actually fight the Kenya and Kenya Land and Freedom Army after they had hung the Comrade Dedan Kimathi, to ensure that now they install their puppet continue running their affairs. And what we ended up was a flag independence party, but entirely all government and economic powers remained under the control of them, of our colonialists as they are today, enabled by the comprador bourgeois, whom they continue also to influence, even as today Kenyans do mark this day, but we have really not yet actually realized true independence. And that's why, as the RYL, we remain committed to the national democratic revolution to ensure that we complete the independence project as it was envisioned by the Kenya Land and Freedom Army, to ensure that entirely all our people are free from both political and economic freedom. To achieve that, that's why we really have 2025 as the year of the national democratic revolution, in completing the national democratic revolution for a truly independent and socialist Kenya.
Any, I guess, last remarks or questions?
Okay, I'll go first, and then Comrade GS, I think we'll finish that. Okay, Comrade GS, are you okay with that, Comrade? Okay, Comrade, we would like first to pass our red salute to you, Comrade, for having invited us to this interview, and also to the entire viewers who will be watching this interview, and the continued commitment to the liberation of the people against all forces of oppression in whatever place they are, in whatever point of the earth that they are. We want to make them know that the Revolutionary Youth League will always side with the people's struggle, and that the Revolutionary Youth League of the Communist Party Marxist Kenya will never compromise on the fundamental rights of the liberation of the people. At no given point in time, that as a party and as a mass organization shall we ever side with the oppressor. That we want to offer our unwavering solidarity with all the fighting and progressive forces here in the continent and across the globe, that we remain united, that we should all have our unity in combating and fighting for the liberation of all the people across the globe against imperialism and the comprador bourgeois. And we were looking forward to that day that all our people will be emancipated all from all forms of emancipation and be really free to enjoy life with dignity in whatever place they are without any infringement from whatever oppressor that might be. Yes, comrade. That's all. Long live international solidarity. Long live.
Long live. For me, it's just to say that we we are we are actually witnessing in real time the second scramble and partition for Africa, and I don't think it's an understatement or an exaggeration to say that. Um, the most overtly that this has been expressed is by the former CEO, I believe, of Blackwater, Eric Prince, who threatened and said that, we need to actually invade the African continent again. And while this hasn't been explicitly done again, in the style that it was carried out during in the wake of the Berlin Conference. And even before that, we are still seeing covert activities that are happening that essentially do the same function of colonialism without the de jure status of it. We see the United Arab Emirates carrying out, carbon colonialism by having this conservation colonialism efforts being pushed in Kenya, and this of course means that we are having lots of pastoral communities being deprived of their land for grazing. We are seeing the frequency of military activities on the African continent, especially in Kenya with this matter of AFRICOM. And we know that even the first round of colonization was not possible without a local population to support the incoming invaders. The colonization of Kenya and the battle against the Kenya Land and Freedom Army was not possible without the Home Guard. And this current wave of attempted recolonization of Africa will not be possible without the AFRICOM part of US AFRICOM. And so we are really emphasizing that to all who are watching this, we are not going to just stand by and watch as this happens again. We are already sick and tired of the status quo as it is, with the comprador and bureaucrat capitalists working as agents of imperialism, and this, in this form of indirect rule that is happening in Kenya. And we say that even as we struggle against the yoke of imperialism, particularly to Africans who might think that our struggle is simply against imperialism, our struggle is against capitalism at its very root, because imperialism is the highest stage of capitalism. So we're not just content in throwing out the imperial forces and their comprador and bureaucrat agents, but we are also against, trying to say that we must substitute that with an entrenched national bourgeoisie. And we say that socialism across the entire African continent is the only true form of liberation. And that will provide, for the first time in so many decades and even centuries, true solidarity between the masses of Africa and the masses across the world, and will forge genuine links between the working classes in Africa and the working classes of Asia, Europe, and the Americas.